Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Nate, and today I'm going to be talking about the evolution of Atari consoles. These are all Atari consoles and handhelds in order. I'm filming outside again. It's a little bit cloudy and dark out here. It looks like it's about to storm, but it should be a little bit quieter because it's not as late as the other ones, but I'm going to be counting all Atari consoles and handhelds in order because Atari didn't really create that much handhelds like the Sega one did, so I'm going to be counting the consoles in here too. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get on to this video. If you will like this video, make sure to hit like and subscribe. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get to the evolution of all Atari consoles and handhelds in order. Have you ever been curious about all Atari consoles and handhelds in order? You're curious how their line of home and portable video game consoles evolved. We'll keep on rating. Though Atari didn't technically make the first video game console, that title goes to the Magnavox Odyssey, it would be easy to consider them the first major home video game company. The name Atari certainly became a mainstream in the video game market until Nintendo crashed onto the scene with the first home console in 1983. Atari was the king of home video gaming. Following the success of Atari's arcade cabinets and before their lackluster home computer endeavors, Atari was in a perfect place and time to capitalize on the new home video gaming market. Atari helped establish success of the home video game market and are forever on the Mount Rushmore of video gaming in general. So let's take a look at Atari's awesome history and all of their entries in the home and portable game market. Atari Home Pong, 1975. Pong is a table tennis game created by Atari and originally released for the arcades in 1972. The game was inspired by a ping pong video game for the Magnavox Odyssey. Magnavox actually later sued Atari for a patent infringement, resulting in a $1.5 million settlement, Atari licensing the technology for Magnavox to continue producing Pong. Pong is considered the first commercially successful video game and later helped establish the home video gaming market, thanks to both Atari and Magnavox. And obviously, it made an appearance on a list of the 20 best arcade games of all time. Lucky for modern gamers, that monumental moment in the history of home video gaming was allowed to play out and Pong went to only grow in popularity and clones. To fully capitalize on the success of Pong in arcades and as Atari's first step into home video gaming, Atari's home Pong console released through the Sears in 1975, right around the time Magnavox discontinued their Odyssey console. Like the arcade release, the home Pong console was very successful in sales and confirmed Atari's suspicious that the world was ready for a true home video gaming console. Atari 2600, 1977. The Atari 2600 is one of the main entries to the first generation of home video game consoles. It was officially released in September of 1977 and was everything we came to know how consoles for. A relative small hardware unit that connects to your home television, interchangeable game cartridges, and 2 controller peripherals. The console was home to some of the most popular arcade-style games of the era, including Space Invaders, Pac-Man, Asteroid, Centipede, and Frogger, to name just a few. Any of those sound familiar? Take a look at our list of the 25 best Atari 2600 games of all time. The Atari 2600 is easily one of the most game-changing milestones in the history of video gaming, and is still considered one of the best. It scored pretty high on our list of the 25 best 80s toys ever 80s kid remember. The 2600 was a title that Atari Video Computer System, or VCS, until the release of the Atari's follow-up, the Atari 5200. The lasting popularity of the 2600 also led to the concurrent release of an Atari Flashback series of games, a console that features built-in games, the first iteration being Atari 7800 base console and the second being based on the 2600. Atari 5200, 1982. The Atari 5200 Super System was Atari's follow-up to the original Atari video gaming computer system and was their upgraded home video console. Like the 2600, the new 5200 console was an 8-bit system, and it featured an upgraded control peripheral that featured many more buttons than the original console. It also featured 4 control ports, which was unusual at the time, then 2 was the standard, though this feature would be eliminated in the second manufacturing of the 5200 in 1983. Atari also experimented with several new control peripherals at the time, including a rolling track battle style controller like the controllers used for the arcade version of Centipede. In many ways, the 5200 was developed as a repurposed version of Atari's personal home computer, Endeavour. The Atari 400, which was made to compete with the Commodore PET and Apple II, but were slightly late in the home computer market. The technology, however, would serve well as home video game console. Atari originally called the 5200 the Advanced Video Computer System, and while the 5200 was in fact an upgrade to the 2600, it did not quite seem to hit the same stride that the 2600 did. Overall, it seemed a bit too late to market, and many complained about the new controller design, which actually just felt like a step down from the awesome joystick controller of the 2600. Atari's 5200 console was only on the market for about 2 years before the launch of their follow-up, the 7800. Though the console was not necessarily a commercial hit, there was still a ton of awesome games to be brought to the 5200 and is short-lived to stay. Check out the list of the 20 best Atari 5200 games of all time. Atari 7800, 1986. The Atari 7800 Pro system took all of the success of the 2600 and all of the complaints about the 5200 and made Atari's perfect 8-bit home video game console. The console was announced in May of 1984, but its release was delayed until May of 1986. There was several roadblocks surrounding the release of the 7800 between lawsuits and the sales of Atari, but none of them stopped the 7800 from stepping onto the scene and establish itself as one of the best video game consoles of the generation. Though the sales could not nearly compete with Nintendo's 80% market share, the 7800 was home to some of the best games of the early 1980s. Check out our list for the 25 best Atari video 7800 games of all time if you need further proof. The 7800 is also almost entirely backwards compatible with Atari 2600 game cartridges, something that was a failure in the Atari 5200. It was also a new concept in video gaming history. While the 7800 was yet another of the first generation home game console that had a noticeable short lifespan, it was one of Atari's best entries in their 8-bit line of consoles. The Atari 7800 is one of the best 8-bit game consoles of all time, and we are happy to see on the list of all Atari consoles and handhelds. It's not like we are ranking them, so of course it will appear, but you know what we mean. Atari XEGS, 1987. The Atari XE video gaming system, or XEGES, is a repurposed Atari personal computer video game system and was Atari's final entry in the 8-bit console series. At the tail end of the first generation of the home video game console, Atari began to reach for straws as Nintendo absolutely dominated the market with their Nintendo Entertainment System. Repackaged in the 65 XE home computer technology, Atari once again gave its customers its leftovers in hopes that they could turn a buck. The console literally shipped an old Atari 400 and 800 packaging with a sticker on it indicating that it was XEGS. If you could look past the realities, and perhaps you wouldn't have realized at the time, the XEGS actually would be slightly more compatible entertainment until it could play much of the previous 8-bit software. And it also could support a wider range of peripherals, including the XEGES keyboard and CX40 joystick and XG-1 light gun. They sold surprisingly well as they represented a less imitating home computer to most consumers at the time when personal home computers seemed like a rocket science. But the end of Atari's 8-bit era was inevitable, and the XEGS console was at least a strong attempt to get out as strongly as possible. An easily forgotten entry in the history of all Atari consoles, but an important one nonetheless. Atari Lynx, 1989. The Atari Lynx is Atari's first entry into the portable gaming market. It was a hybrid 8-bit and 16-bit handheld game console released in September of 1989. The Lynx was a surprisingly advanced console for the time, and it had features that made it quite appealing over the main competitor, the Nintendo Game Boy. The Lynx was the world's first color handheld game console, featured a backlit display, and had unique networking capabilities. That followed up with 15 units to compete against each other. Most games only supported up to 8. The console literally has 2 CPU units. Inside a 16-bit custom CMOS chip and an 8-bit custom CMOS chip. The Atari Lynx is also accredited as the first game console with the ability to zoom and distort sprite graphics. At the design of the console made it allow left and right-handed gameplay by literally flipping the console upside down, coming 10 years before the WonderSwan, which also focused on flippable gameplay. The Atari Lynx was a pretty cool device in the history of video gaming and one of the best to appear on the list of all Atari consoles. Atari Lynx 2, 1989. Following the moderate success of July Lynx, Atari launched the Lynx 2 in July of 1991. The Lynx 2 was a smaller and lighter version of the original console with many improvements made overall. Improved performances, better battery life, a better screen with backlit that could be turned off to save on the battery life, stereo sound, and smaller price tag. So the Atari Lynx 2 is one of the most examples of actual improvement made in the Atari console upgrade. Atari Jaguar, 1993. The Atari Jaguar is a home video game console in November of 1993. The Jaguar featured two custom 32-bit processors, technically making the world's first 64-bit game console in an era of 16 and 32-bit consoles, though critics do not agree on the math used there. Unfortunately, we should probably see this coming. The technological inventions of the Jaguar did not save it from Atari's usual roadblocks and shortcomings that have always seemed to get in their way. Hardware bugs and poor third-party support led to poor sales and only 50 game titles to come to the system. Of course, Atari also attempted to save the Jaguar from drowning with the release of the Atari Jaguar CD add-on in 1995, which introduced an additional 13 games and gave the console about another year of life before it was discontinued. The failure of the Jaguar was seemingly the nail in the coffin for Atari's home video game endeavors. Atari's history in the home video game market was rocky to say the least. They started quite strong and easily could be considered the reason home video gaming became a part of pop culture. But the torch was passed to Nintendo and Sega and they just never gave it back. Atari VCS 2020. Atari VCS, aka the Atari Box, was a surprisingly complimentary entry in the home video gaming console market by Atari. The VCS, the name taken from the original name of the 2600, is a microconsole that allows users to download and play games on a Linux-based operating system called Atari OS. The console was a crowd-funded project originally announced in 2017 and shipped towards backers in 2020. The contemporary VCS was made to play lower and PC games as well as preloaded classic Atari titles. Hey, guess what worked out? Haha, I feel like I'm repeating myself. A lot in respecting the Atari VCS was ultimately another failed attempt by Atari, and one could have just easily avoided entirely. But even 25 years later, Atari is still hoping to undo some of the failure in their hardware history. Sadly for them, it just ain't working. The list of all Atari consoles and handhelds in order features quite a lot of misses. We would like to just remember Atari 2600, the Atari 7800, the Atari Lynx, and just forget the rest of the list. That way, we could see Atari as winners in the history of video gaming. Sometimes you gotta take risks to achieve great things. Atari is still swinging for the fences even in modern times. We are hoping to see them get one more win. And that was it. That was the evolution of Atari. This was perhaps the most shortest video of the other ones, but I'll see you guys next time. Bye.